My adoptive parents only took me in to use me as their son's servant while ignoring how violent he was to me. So I unleashed their darkest truth and turned the tables in the most devastating way possible. Now they're begging me to keep quiet. I'm 28F, and for most of my life, I thought I was the lucky one. That's what everyone said anyway. You're lucky they took you in. They'd remind me whenever I looked the slightest bit upset. So many kids never get adopted at all, but luck isn't what I felt. Not at 8, when I was brought into their home. Not at 16, when I had bruises I couldn't explain. And definitely not now, looking back on the hollow version of myself, I became just to survive. My adoptive parents, Meredith 54F and Paul 57M, were praised in our community. Church-going, well-off. Constantly featured in local papers for opening their home to a child in need. I was that child. But the truth is, they didn't adopt me to love me. They adopted me for their son, their biological golden child, Caleb 30M. At the time, Caleb was 10. He was troubled, they told the agency. He needed stability, structure, companionship. What they meant was, he needed someone to dump on. Someone who wouldn't fight back. That someone was me. In the beginning, it was subtle. Caleb would shove me when no one was looking, pinch me under the dinner table, snatch toys from me, and then laugh when I cried. Meredith would look annoyed, like I was the problem. She's too sensitive, she once told a neighbor. Needs to toughen up. By the time I turned 12, toughening up meant cooking Caleb's breakfast every morning before school. Cleaning his room. Folding his laundry. If I didn't, he'd scream. Break something. And they'd blame me. She didn't listen. Caleb would say, shrugging, as if my defiance caused his tantrums. Well, she needs to learn, Paul would reply. And that was that. It only got worse. Caleb was violent, not just in words but in actual, terrifying outbursts. He once cornered me in the garage and held a wrench like he might swing it. I ran upstairs, crying. Meredith said I was trying to get attention. You need to stop provoking him, she snapped. You know he has a temper. A temper. That's what they called it. Not abuse. Not danger. Just a temper. From age 12 to 17, I was the live-in help. The emotional punching bag. I wasn't allowed to go to sleepovers. I wasn't allowed to have friends over. I wasn't even allowed to shut my bedroom door unless I was changing. And even then, Meredith would knock constantly like I was hiding something. They had rules for me that Caleb never had. If I came home 2 minutes late from school, I was grounded. Caleb would disappear for hours, come back high or drunk, and Paul would just sigh and hand him $50 for food. I remember my 18th birthday. Caleb threw a party. For himself. At our house. Meredith made a cake. Paul grilled steaks. I wasn't invited. I was told to help clean up after. I cried in the laundry room while guests laughed in the living room. That's when it really hit me. I wasn't part of the family. I was part of the furniture. College was supposed to be my escape. I got a partial scholarship and was thrilled. It meant I could finally leave. Meredith wasn't happy. We've done everything for you, she said coldly. And now you're just going to leave like we're nothing. Paul refused to co-sign for my student housing. If you're leaving, do it on your own, he said. We're done raising you. But they weren't done using me. Halfway through my sophomore year, I got a call from Meredith. She was crying. Caleb had gone through something and needed help. His girlfriend had dumped him and he wasn't coping. She asked me to come home just for a few weeks. I hesitated. I should have said no. But guilt runs deep when you've been conditioned like I was. I went home. Big mistake. Within a day, Caleb was calling me lazy for not doing the dishes. Meredith handed me a shopping list and said, make yourself useful. Paul asked if I could run some errands for the family. I lasted a week before packing up. When I told them I was leaving, Caleb punched a hole in the right next to my head. Meredith screamed at me for setting him off. Paul said I should have known better. I drove back to school shaking. After graduation, I cut contact for almost 5 years. I moved across the state, changed my number, and didn't look back. Therapy helped. A lot. I finally understood that what happened to me wasn't normal. It wasn't okay. I built a life. I got a job in social services. I got married to a kind, quiet man named Julian 33M who never once raised his voice at me. And eventually, we decided to start the adoption process ourselves. That's when everything resurfaced. To adopt, you need to provide detailed background information. They ask about your own upbringing, your family, your childhood trauma. I hesitated, but I wanted to be honest. The social worker, Karen 45F, read my file and raised an eyebrow. "You said you were adopted," she said. "But there's no legal record of it." I blinked. "What?" She showed me the paperwork. Turns out, Meredith and Paul never officially adopted me. I had lived with them from age 8 to 18 under what's called permanent guardianship. I had assumed I was adopted because that's what called it. But in reality, they never took the legal steps. I was never their daughter. Just a ward of the court. A convenient one. Convenient because guardians don't get as many background checks. But they do get subsidies. Payments. From the state. That's when everything clicked. They didn't take me in to raise me. They took me in to profit off me. Meredith used to joke that I was our little tax write-off. I thought it was a bad joke. Now, I'm not so sure. That's when I started digging. And what I found made my stomach turn. There were record state payments made every month for my care. Meredith had been listed as my case supervisor. And Caleb. He had been reported. Twice. By teachers. For violent behavior. Toward me. But each time, Meredith had explained it away in the files. She's troubled. She lies for attention. They fight like normal siblings. Only, we weren't siblings. And I wasn't lying. I requested a full copy of my case file, through FOIA. It took weeks. But when it arrived, I sat on my couch and sobbed. I read through pages of notes from social workers who never followed up. Reports that went ignored. Photos of me at age 10, with a black eye, that were never investigated. I had been forgotten. Used. Discarded. That's when I knew. I couldn't let this stay buried. Not for me. Not for the child I hoped to adopt. Not for anyone who had ever been treated like I had. And so, I decided to do something. I was going to make them answer for what they did. But I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't fight. I wouldn't even confront them. I would do it the one way they'd never see coming. Quietly. Legally. Publicly. Because what they didn't know was that I still had something they'd never expect. Something they forgot existed. And that something was proof. So I had proof. Hard evidence that Meredith and Paul had never legally adopted me, had lied to social services, and had pocketed years of payments meant for my care. But it was more than just money. It was neglect. It was abuse. It was a systemic failure they manipulated for their own convenience, and I had been the collateral damage. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. So I made an appointment with a local investigative journalist. Her name was Eliza 41F. She had a reputation for exposing flaws in foster care and adoption systems. I didn't expect her to take me seriously at first. But the second she saw the photos, the payment logs, and the school incident reports, she sat up straight. "How long did this go on?" she asked quietly. 10 years, I said. They made me cook, clean, raise their son, and blamed me for everything he did. I thought I was crazy for a long time. Her lips tightened. "You weren't crazy. You were groomed." The article took 3 months to publish. Eliza was thorough. She pulled public records, talked to old neighbors, even tracked down one of the teachers who filed a report against Caleb. Her story came out with the headline, "A Childhood Sold, How One Girl Was Used for Profit Under the Guise of Love." It exploded. I didn't expect it to go viral, but it did, mostly because of the emotional weight behind it. My journal entries from when I was 12 were included in the piece. So were photos of the house, the bruises, the gaps in the paperwork. The comments section was brutal. People were outraged. Hundreds shared their own stories, kids who had been adopted for money, mistreated, silenced. But the part that hit hardest. Eliza also interviewed a former social worker named Deanna 62F, who reviewed my file and admitted, on record, that it never should have been approved. There were red flags everywhere, Deanna said. But the agency was understaffed. Cases slipped through. I regret it every day. 2 weeks later, the local news ran the story. Then a national one picked it up. And that's when Meredith and Paul called me. At first it was from an unknown number. Then another. Then texts. You've ruined our lives. How could you do this to the people who raised you? We took you in out of the kindness of our hearts. No, they didn't. They took me in because I was a paycheck. A servant. A shield to hide behind. And I was done letting them rewrite the truth. The fallout was swift. The state launched an investigation into their guardianship records. Turns out, I wasn't the only child they'd taken in temporarily. There had been 2 others before me. One stayed only a year. The other moved in with grandparents at 13. The state froze their subsidy accounts. They were charged with fraud and ordered to return over $187,000 in misappropriated funds. Meredith tried to play victim in court. Claimed I had mental health issues and was spinning a fake story for attention. But my file, and Eliza's reporting, made that lie crumble. They lost. But that wasn't the end. I hadn't heard from Caleb in over 8 years. Until he showed up, unannounced, at my office building. Security called me. Sediman was downstairs screaming, claiming I had destroyed his family. I stood by the window and looked down at him. Still angry. Still dangerous. Still blaming everyone but himself. I didn't go down. Instead, I handed the security guard a restraining order I had already filed. I had it ready the moment the article dropped. They escorted him off the property. I haven't seen him since. A few months later, I received an email I never expected. It was from a woman named Rena, 26F. She wrote, "Hi, I think we may have lived with the same people. I was with them when I was 6 to 8. I thought I was crazy too, until I read your story. Thank you for speaking up. We met for coffee." She remembered the same things. Meredith's cold indifference. Paul's silence. Caleb's rages. She even remembered the chore chart. The one where our names were written in red, but Caleb's was in blue with barely anything assigned. It felt surreal. Like waking from a long nightmare, and realizing others had been trapped in it too. Today, I work with a nonprofit that focuses on reforming guardianship abuse laws. I speak at panels. I help mentor girls aging out of foster care. I tell them the truth. You are not a burden. You are not unworthy. You are just in the wrong hands, and that doesn't define your future. As for my own family, Julian and I finalized the adoption of a beautiful little girl this spring. Her name is Isla. She's 7. She loves painting and dancing, and asking the questions at bedtime. She knows my story, in pieces. One day, I'll tell her everything. But for now, she just knows this. I was raised by people who didn't love me. But now, I get to raise you, and I love you more than anything in this world. Sometimes, justice isn't loud. Sometimes, it's just a quiet voice saying, I lived through that. And I survived. And I won't let it happen again. They used me to serve their son. But now, I serve truth. I serve healing. I serve children who deserve so much more than I got. And that, to me, is the most devastating and most beautiful way to turn the tables.